All right, welcome back to college algebra. We're going to continue on with some more examples of finding all the solutions to a polynomial when you're not even given one. So the first thing we're going to do is figure out what our P and our Q are. P value is 1, Q value is 3. So we want all the positive and negative P over Q possibilities we could have. So first we list the factors of P. Well, P is 1, so the only factor of 1 is 1. And Q is 3. So we've got 1, and the factors of 3 would be 1 and 3. So your possibilities are going to be plus or minus 1 over 1 or 1 over 3, which is the same thing as 1 and 1/3. Well, I'm going to try f of 1 because it's easier to try factors. So first we're going to see, is this a factor? F of 1. So we're going to take 1 and replace every x with a 1 to see if you get a 0. If you do, then that's a factor. So we want 1 squared minus 3 times 1 minus 1. And if you figure all that out, you do get 0, which is good. So we know 1 is a 0. We also know that x minus 1 is a factor. But we're going to use that 0 to do some synthetic division. We're going to put all the coefficients of the original f of x up there. So it'll be 3, positive 1, negative 3, negative 1. And then do some synthetic division with that. So bring down the 3, multiply it by the 1. Let's put this like I've been doing it in prior lessons. So we're going to take the 3, multiply it by the red 1, and the result goes here. So 3 times 1 is 3. We're going to add 1 and 3. And we're going to take the 4 and multiply it by the red 1 to get a 4 here, and add those two to get a positive 1. Then we're going to multiply the 1 on the bottom by the red 1 to get positive 1. And then when we add those, it's no surprise that we get 0, because we knew from up here that when you put 1 into the original function, you get a 0 out. So of course, when we do synthetic division, we need a 0 remainder. So let's look at the depressed equation. The equation that we get out of that is 3x, let's see, this is x cubed, so this is going to come down 1 power, plus 4x to the first power, that comes down 1 power, plus 1. So now what we know is we have one factor that looks like this, and then we have the other factor from the P and Q that we found is going to be x minus 1, right? Okay, so problem with the green factor is that it's not completely factored yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the slip and slide method to factor it. So we're going to bring this 3 back to the 1 and pretend for a minute that we're factoring x squared plus 4x plus 1 times 3, or 3. So factors of 3 that add up to 4 are 1 and 3. So this can be temporarily factored like x plus 1 and x plus 3. But remember, we slipped the 3, so we got to slide it back into the problem. Move this down a little bit. So now we have 3x plus 3, right? Because we're going to swing that up front. And since 3 is divisible by 3, we just have x plus 1 here. And we still have the original factor that we found with the P and Q also. All right, so from here, what we're going to do is just set each factor that we found equal to 0 to find all the zeros. So as we know, x minus 1 equals 0. We already had this 0 from the beginning, from the P and Q. If I did 3x plus 3 equals 0, I would get 3x equals negative 3 when I subtract 3. And then x is equal to negative 1 when I divide both sides by 3. And then this factor, x plus 1 equals 0, we just get x is equal to negative 1. So the answer to this question, since it's asking you for all zeros, is the 1 that you found using P and Q, and the, oh, something's wrong here. Let's see, 1, negative 1, and oh, I know what I did wrong. Sorry. This should have been a 1. Because all we're doing is swinging the 3 up, where the 1 stays where it is. So this would be also a 1. And then this would be a negative 1/3. So the answers are 1, negative 1/3, and negative 1. All right, a couple more. Okay, find all zeros. So let's start with our P and Q. P is here, it's 2. Q is here, it's also 2. So the factors of 2 are 1 and 2 on the top and 1 and 2 on the bottom. So you could combine those to get plus or minus. 1 over 1 would just be 1. You could get 1 over 2, or you could get 2 over 1, or you could get 2 over 2, which is the same thing as 1, so we don't need to list it twice. So those are our possible P values. Let's try something easy. Let's try P of 1 to see if we get 0. So it'd be 2x cubed minus 7x squared minus 2, where we're trying to see if 1 is a solution. Put that in your calculator and you would indeed, oops, I'm forgetting something. Plus 7x minus 2. You put 1 everywhere there, you would get a 0. So you know that 1 is a 0. And if 1 is a 0, then x minus 1 is a factor. Okay, so now let's do synthetic division with 1, since we know that it is definitely one of the solutions or zeros. I'm just going to use the coefficients from the f of x. Oops. So -7, +7, and -2. So we'll do some synthetic division and add. Oops. -5 times 1 is -5. Add those two, you get a +2. +2 times 1 is +2. And no surprise, we get a 0 remainder because we knew it was a solution. But what that does give us is the depressed equation. So let's see, we started out with a cubic, so we've got to move down 1 degree. So we're going to go to 2x squared minus 5x, coming down 1 more degree, and finally +2. So we already knew, from our P and Q, we figured out that one of the factors is x minus 1. Here's the other factor, but it is not factored all the way. So we're going to use slip and slide to swing this over here. Pretend for a moment that we're factoring x squared minus 5x plus 4. So it's just temporary, right? This is the slip and slide method. All right, so if you tried to factor factors of 4 that add up to 5, it's definitely going to be 4 and 1. They both have to be negative in order to add up to a negative 5. So temporarily, we can factor this like x minus 4 and x minus 1. But since we slipped that 2, we got to slide it back into the problem. So we've got x minus 2 times 2x minus 1. And then let's bring our original factor down so we don't forget that in our final answer. So now we're just going to set each of these equal to 0. X minus 1 equals 0. X minus 2 is 0. And 2x minus 1 is 0. So here we already knew that this was 1, right? We found that earlier with the p and the q. Here we'd get x is equal to positive 2. And here we would get 2x is equal to 1. And then finally, x is equal to 1/2. So those are our 3 solutions. All right, and one more example for you. So let's see. Positive or minus p over q. P is 5, or q is also 5. So if you take factors of 5, you would have 1 and 5 on the top and the bottom. So the possible values for p over q equal plus or minus 1 over 1, which is 1, or 1 over 5, or 5 over 1, which is 5, or 5 over 5, which is also 1. So we're not going to repeat that. So those are possibles. Always want to start with the easiest one. So I'm going to start with f of 1 just because it's easy to calculate. So I'm going to put it everywhere I see an x and make sure that, or see if it adds up to 0. And in fact, if you did that math, you would find that it does. So we're going to use that 1, since we know it's a 0, in synthetic division with the same polynomial above. We're just doing the synthetic division now. 1 times 5 is 5. Add those two together, you get negative 26. Multiply it by the red one here, and you're going to get negative 26. You add it, you will get positive 5. Multiply 5 by the red one again. Here you get positive 5, and then when you add that, you get a 0. We should not be surprised because we knew if this is equal to 0, then the remainder for synthetic division will also be 0. All right, so now we have our depressed equation. And since this is a 3, we're going to move this down to squared term. And then the 26 will go with the next term in line, which is x to the first. And 5 just doesn't have a variable. All right, we are again going to use slip and slide on this. Oh, by the way, we know that x minus 1 is a factor, right? All right, so if we use slip and slide, we're going to slide that back there and pretend for a minute that we're factoring 5 times 5 is 25. So factors of 25 that add up to 26, and it's a negative 26, would be 1 and 25. They both have to be negative in order to add up to negative 26. And of course, they'd be they would multiply to give you 25, since a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay, so that means we can temporarily factor this as x minus 1 and x minus 25. But remember, since we slipped this 5, we got to slide it back into the problem. Now from here, we could take that 1/5 and swing it up front, but we're just going to end up setting it equal to 0 anyway. So one solution would be x is equal to 1. You knew that from the P over Q. Another solution would be x minus 1/5 equals 0. So x is equal to positive 1/5. And this one would be x minus 25 divided by 5 is just 5. So we'd also get x is equal to 5. All right, so those are a couple more examples, and that should help you to do the additional work on Schoology.